This episode is brought to you by Forethought. Most companies build their customer experience in pieces. Sales in one system, support in another, and onboarding somewhere else. Forethought brings it all together. Forethought is an AI system made up of advanced agents that handle sales, onboarding, support, and retention. Each team manages its own agents. The customer sees one unified experience. Forethought powers over 1 billion interactions every month for brands like Scale AI, Cohere, Airtable, and Upwork. Learn more at forethought.ai.
Welcome back to America. I'm here with Max Child and James Wilsterman. Hey, guys.
Hello, Eric.
Hey, Eric.
We had a fun European adventure, a couple weeks ago with the Cerebral Valley AI Summit in London. Yeah, we had a blast. I don't know. What did you guys think about it?
I thought it was a tremendous experience. I mean, it really drove home how exciting the AI scene is in Europe, which I think, you know, in the sort of mobile and web eras, maybe is seen a little bit beleaguered compared to America. But I felt like AI startups and big companies are totally popping off there. I mean, we had Granola, we had Lovable, we had Synthesia, Photo Room, and then, you know, on the big company side, obviously we had Wave and Uber, which was super exciting. And so,
well, in classic Cerebral Valley, I feel like the buzzy startup founders are the real celebrities. You know, it's like, I mean, people are excited about Dara, and we had Dylan Field at Figma, which, you know, was like a week away from filing its S1. But yeah, I feel like the Lovable guy and the Granola guy, you know, were definitely sort of people of interest at the event.
My spidey sense for startup heat was very tingly around the Lovable guy. He was Anton. I interviewed him, but like even just walking in, he was being surrounded by like investors and partners and other startups, and you could just get the vibe. He's a little mini celebrity in the AI scene.
He's a unicorn now.
He's a unicorn now as of like today or yesterday.
Yeah.
So
How many coding AI adjacent companies are unicorns now? We've got like Lovable, Replit, Cursor, Windsurf. It's just like goes on and on.
And the narrative moves so fast. Is it good to be a coding startup now, or are we already like, oh man, cost of goods sold and everything are out of control and we're in big trouble?
Windsurf was falling apart, and luckily they were able to save it. I don't know.
Right.
Since Cerebral Valley, though, we've had people like bouncing between Anthropic and back and to Cursor and back, and we've had this whole saga of Windsurf getting chopped up.
I don't know. If I had to stick my finger in the air right now, I feel like the mood is it's good to be a model again. I mean, you've got a big sentiment that Anthropic and Claude are key to coding, and that you sort of rather be Anthropic than Cursor. And obviously, we're recording this on Thursday. It's coming out on Friday. I mean, OpenAI just did a live stream about agents, and seems like, oh, we're figuring out this agent thing. I don't know. You know, I think they're trying to be supportive of MCP, you know, the sort of generic open source interface across agents. But then they're making the announcement that like, oh, that thing you were trying to build a company around? Yeah, we do that too. So I guess my take at the moment is models back in ascendancy, which you'd hope so given their valuations.
Yeah. I mean, I think obviously we've had this debate a million times, but I think ultimately it is good to be the company that has put, you know, $5 to $10 billion to work on something rather
so
than
got all that money,
the company.
I hope so.
Yeah. Then the company that is slightly repackaging the thing the other guy did for $5 to $10 billion. Like, I mean, there are obviously, I think, application use cases here, but you know,
we've been bullish on applications.
Yeah. Oh no, I am bullish on applications, but I do think, you know, anything that's sort of close proximity to the model itself, which I think a lot of these coding startups are very close proximity to the model itself in many ways, is a dangerous place to be because, you know, Dario and Sam have got their eyes on that space.
It's like you don't want to be the most popular application that makes the most money, because then you're squaring the targets of the foundation model labs. It's like you kind of want to be like making good money, but not like the number one use case of LLMs.
We're going to get into clips. So this episode is really, we're going to engage with key moments at the Cerebral Valley AI Summit, which I think will be fun. Well, you can go watch them all on YouTube, and I think they're all still pretty current, even though AI moves fast. But we're bringing you our favorite clips so that if you don't have the time, you can get the best of what happened there. I wanted to say two different things. One, on London, I think one thing I really liked about the event is that we took a sort of like, AI is global and we're not getting dragged into like which city is the best. I mean, obviously London has DeepMind and there are like good companies in Europe, but it's like, yeah, it's a global world, all connected on the internet. There are great people everywhere. Like, I think like half the audience was London and half came from elsewhere, probably like, I don't know, a quarter US and a quarter rest of Europe. I don't know.
Yeah, decent amount of like France and Sweden and things like that for sure.
Though we had a train.
Yeah.
Public transportation infrastructure, despite being like much, better on its surface, consistently, we had transportation problems across Europe. Eurostar was in trouble from France. And then I had my flight delayed out of France from an air traffic controller strike. So I don't know. They brag about public transit there, or transit, and then they can't keep it working.
It's like their healthcare system or something, works great for most people most of the time, and then falls apart at the limits.
The other thing is we have not officially committed to going back to London. It's like we need a sponsor bidding war between New York and London, between which one we head for first. So if you have a strong horse in the New York versus London race, reach out about sponsoring.
I mean, I would just say, in terms of vibes at the event, the London audience was dramatically more engaged than the New York audience. I would say they were excited to be there. They stayed for the whole event. They engaged with the speakers. They wanted to chat and meet people afterwards. Whereas,
well, those New Yorkers, they're grinding. They're like, I have a fucking job. Like,
and New Yorkers are like, I've got a happy hour at 3:45 that I've got to be at. So the 4:30 speakers will not be fully attended.
I like the New York event.
Before I go back to work until
you live
midnight.
in New York. You're a bit of a booster.
It did have a little bit of like, we had Goldman, we had Snowflake. It had a little bit of like big company tries to like embrace AI, whereas I do think it turned out that Europe had some of the cooler up and coming startups. I mean, I think Rogo, which we had at the FinTech event, is Buzzy New York application company. I mean, there's certainly, I'm sure if we dug into like finance AI startups, we'd get more of the like application excitement in New York. I flew back from San Francisco a couple weeks ago to be on a New York Tech Week panel. And of course, we, from one of the New York boosters, Julie Samuels, I don't know who it is. I forget what her group is these days, but, does advocacy for New York's tech scene. Was like, oh, what do you think about the New York's tech scene? And I gave the most like, pro San Francisco. Just like, the beauty of New York to me is that people come through. It's everybody's like second favorite city, no matter where you are. But I'm not sitting here claiming that New York is the center of the tech universe.
And they're like, you are not invited to next year's event.
I know, but I just believe, I've said this a million times, but I agree with Ryan Hoover, the product hunt guy, who said to me during the pandemic, Silicon Valley is online. Like, come on. It's like, it's on the internet. Like, who cares where people are? All right. Back to the present moment. A lot's happened. We're in now this like AI spending war for employees, obviously with Meta, which is, I think, the most present happening. Obviously, Scale deal had just happened when we started the London event. Let's get into clips and let's react to some specific lines from the most recent Cerebral Valley AI Summit.
I mean, in the Uber case, you came in, you did spin out Aurora. Like, yep. How did you...
We merged ATG into Aurora, yes.
Yeah, and then became its own company. Yeah. How did you decide, I guess, that self-driving wasn't there in 2017, or that this shouldn't be something to invest in? Or how did you go into sort of all your technologists saying, oh, we're just tomorrow, and say, I'm not convinced?
Listen, I think Eric, was a really tough decision at the time. And one is we were deeply marked by the fact that we had an accident, lost a life there. And so the responsibility that you hold in your hands when you're operating in the real world hit us deeply. I think the other circumstance that affected the ultimate judgment was that we ran ATG very separately from mainline Uber because we wanted the opportunity to partner with the rest of the ecosystem. Again, like we don't just work with, we don't just have Priuses on our platform. We got Ford. We want to work with the entire ecosystem. And when I went and talked with some of the other AV developers, I'd say, ATG, it's in the family, but it's separate. We're going to treat you fairly. We're not going to share data, et cetera. When you're having a conversation, actually, like I usually do with you, and I'm saying stuff and you don't believe a fucking thing I say, pardon me, that was the response. We were having conversations, but I think people didn't trust us because they also viewed us, rightly so, as a competitor.
Right.
So we had a decision to make. Do we go with a proprietary kind of vertical strategy, or do we truly partner with an industry? We couldn't have the best of both worlds. And ultimately, we decided that a partnership model was the right model going forward. And based on, basically all of the leading players, sans Tesla, but everyone else is open, working with us, et cetera, I think it was the right decision to make.
I guess I don't really buy this explanation, honestly, because if you think of like Amazon today, right? They sell a lot of their own, Amazon branded products on their marketplace. It pisses off their suppliers, and they do it anyway because it's a good business idea. Like I just don't really buy that this is a good enough reason not to invest in your own self-driving technology just because other providers on the marketplace won't be happy about it.
Right. I mean, the premise of my question was that I thought it was skepticism on the imminence of the technology working and Uber's team particularly working, and Aurora, which is what they spun off, has not really delivered on a major successful.
That might be the real
technology.
answer.
So to me, I did think like a call on the quality of the technology was the reason. But I mean, I don't know. I take him at his face. I mean, it's interesting that his actual first answer was that they had such a negative PR situation that could they really do it? And I think it's easy to forget how much Dara was brought in to like clean up the PR situation. It's like we had the hack. And they had literally, launched self-driving cars in the firestorm of their PR nightmare without the approval of like San Francisco. It was like just brazen.
I mean, I do ultimately think that if Uber can sort of maintain its like marketplace, middleman position between riders and drivers, even if there are no drivers and it's just Waymos, or, in the case of Cerebral Valley London, it was Wave they were partnering with. And it's plausible that for, 120 different countries around the world, there's going to be, 60 different self-driving companies you need to ultimately partner with, to serve self-driving cars to people in all these different locations, that Uber may ultimately be the sort of aggregator of this need for a car, whether it has a person behind the wheel or not, right? And I think if that strategy works, I think they're in an awesome position, because kind of being the middleman in this massive market of personal transportation is really great. I think what's the challenge is in San Francisco, there's this sort of Waymo brand loyalty building among the tech community. I think like people like James, are like, I basically only take Waymos, even if they take longer and they're more expensive, and I use the Waymo app, right? And so it's an interesting question, like for someone like James, I would pose like, if Waymos were in Uber in any city you wanted to visit, and you could just, instead of clicking UberX, you click Waymo, like, would you just go back to using the Uber app because like sometimes you want to use the UberX because it comes faster, and sometimes you want to use Waymo because you like it more, like, or would you be like, no, I'm always using the Waymo app?
I do think a lot of Uber's success here depends on their ability to specifically convince Waymo that they should not deploy in every city and need to participate in the platform. I mean, and they're running those experiments now, so it'll be interesting to see where Waymo thinks the power resides.
Yeah, I think I would, that to that point, like if I know there's a Waymos in certain cities that I can only access through Uber, it'll probably switch the habit back to just using Uber everywhere, including in San Francisco, if I can access Waymos through the Uber app. All of this, though, is just pointing back to my original point, which I just think Uber would still be better off if they owned something approximating Waymo right now. Like, I just don't see a world where they are worse off in that scenario.
If it's Waymo quality.
If it's Waymo quality.
Yeah.
And who knows if they could have gotten there.
Right. Amazon knows that they can deliver,
batteries just as well as Duracell or whatever. Yeah.
And Costco and places, they pick lanes where they see where they can offer something.
I'm not saying it was like a bad decision to spin this off originally. I just think disingenuous to say that he's only doing this for platform neutrality. Like,
well, literally like a day or two after the event, there was reporting in the New York Times that Uber might be working with Travis Kalanick to like acquire a Chinese self-driving car startup. So it's very possible this is on Dara's mind that there are all these Chinese startups that have actually caught up really well in self-driving, and we spun off the one that wasn't succeeding and cost us a ton of money. Now everybody's ripping each other off, and they're all going to catch up to each other, just like the language models. And so then we have our white label version, so nobody can push us around too much. Like, yeah, I think that's very plausible. And they skip a lot of the needless money losing that's hard to do on the public markets.
It's like Google Pixel or something, right? Yeah, you want the flagship that just kind of shows how to do this, and you want to learn, even if you're, also distributing Android to other phone makers.
I do think, to Eric's point, Waymo is so head and shoulders above the field right now that you would just be terrified that you're going to lose Waymo. And so you got to balance these considerations of like, is it going to piss off Waymo if we work with this Chinese startup? Like, well, what if Waymo just walks away tomorrow? Like, we better have a backup plan, So it's a challenging place to be. And I feel
the
like
Waymo brand is so good right now. You got started in like Jaguars. You have none of the baggage of like bad Uber rides. It's just like, it's such a good, the NPS on Waymo has got to be like great relative for actual like riders. Yeah. Anyway, it's like a quintessential technology debate question, which is just like, what are the platform dynamics? Who actually has leverage? And it'll be interesting to see it play out. But it sounds like we all agree that it would serve Uber to have some credible self-driving car technology of its own, at least to understand the fundamentals and have a little bit of a competitive edge against potentially bullying partners. All right. Well, we did Uber. Let's do the other big headliner from the event. Dylan Field, the CEO of Figma, who literally he seemed very busy when we saw him. And I can see why. I think they literally flipped their S1 filing the next week. So very appreciative that he made it to London at sort of the busiest possible moment for a pre-IPO company.
I wanted to talk about sort of the company building piece of this for a second. Sure. I mean, you're clearly sort of moving towards going public. I'm curious, what your decision-making process has been. We're in this moment where Stripe, SpaceX, it feels like they can stay perpetually private. What's sort of the impetus to potentially move Figma towards the public markets?
Yeah, I mean, I can't talk, like I told you, about anything regarding that process, but I think that just the important thing that I've been making sure that I'm grounded in every day, whatever happens with going public, not going public, is this is the moment to make sure that we are all in on product. Whether that's me, our team, there is so much to build, so many workflows changing, so much happening, and we have such opportunity to help our customers. So that's what we're pushing for every day.
It's funny to hear that played back. As an interviewer, him being like, I told you I couldn't talk about this, seared in my mind in a way that watching it was like, okay, he said that and he moved on. I do think he could have been slightly less defensive. To me, it's always better just to be they ask questions they feel like they have to ask, and I can say whatever the fuck I want. He could say something totally different. He could have pretended like I didn't even ask the question, Anyway, besides that little bristle at my just doing my job and asking a question, it's clear that they feel the need to have a great sort of pipeline of products heading into an IPO, and they literally are presenting themselves as having launched 4 fresh products after having 4 products just this year.
My take is that he actually believes that they're in a disruptive moment. We talked about on the podcast before, where technology is changing and will affect them in many ways through AI. And then also, it's a message to his team to say even though we are going public and this is an amazing milestone for the company, don't get distracted, because we actually have to fight those battles and build product.
Yeah, I think it's interesting given our experience with these vibe coding tools over the last couple months, James, that to me, it increasingly seems like the bottleneck for vibe coding or AI assisted coding or whatever you want to call it is the quality of the design. I would say that like the designs you get out of these tools, whether it's like Cursor or Lovable or Claude Code or whatever, are just garbage, like really bad. And it's a sort of interesting question if like Figma is extremely well positioned in that case because they have all the designers, like all the good designers in software essentially use Figma, and they can actually convert this sort of group of people who actually know how to make things that look and feel really great and polished into becoming creators and developers. Or if you go the other way, which is say like, oh no, well, everyone else is going to like actually grab these designers and they're going to start understanding how to use Cursor and Claude Code. And then once Cursor and Claude Code level up on their quality of design by either training on new data or just something else, then all these designers are just going to be using Claude Code or Cursor, which is kind of what we experienced in the company in the last few weeks when we trained everyone on Claude Code. It's like all of a sudden every person in the company, whether in design or product or data or marketing, can now build apps. They all just look like garbage because the models aren't there yet.
I think Figma is in a funny situation launching Figma Make, which is their sort of lovable, what have
right.
you.
Vibe coding platform.
What's the vibe coding platform? Is that what we're calling the category?
I mean, I don't know what they're calling it, but that's what I'm calling it. Yeah.
I mean, it puts them in a weird position where they have to sort of defend the category, which I think is still like messy and broken. I think they created like Figma. I mean, a lot of what Figma is doing is like sort of, you're a marketer or you're a website builder. We're going to give you sort of a lightweight version of Figma so it's easier for you to get in and do what you want. And so they created Figma sites for web creation, and that has like a Figma Make integration. And in some ways, I think that makes more sense with Figma's like long-term plan, where it's like deeply integrated with their design elements. And Figma Make feels a little bit like, all right, there's this sexy thing that everybody has. It's just sort of like a wrapper over models. If there's going to be so much zeitgeist around it, let's have it too. But I agree that the real opportunity for Figma is that like they have all your design assets. They have all your design assets. It's a moment when context is seen as like extremely important. And Figma has all your context on how you design things. And so clearly the more they can make this Make thing much more like related to the actual design tools and assets that Figma has, it'll be much more valuable, and then it'll be truly differentiated from Lovable and everybody else.
I mean, for the record, like, I don't know if they're going to do this, if they have the talent to do this, or if it's a focus of theirs, but they have this tremendous opportunity to essentially like train as a, the first good model in terms of design for vibe coding or for creating software, right? I mean, they have, again, basically every like good design of software, is on Figma for the last like 10 years.
I don't know if they can
right?
actually use that data to train, but yeah.
I mean, they should. I don't know. Their lawyers should try to find some loopholes on this. Yeah.
I guess what would you be outputting? You'd just be outputting the layers themselves, not the code. You're saying, like,
I don't know how it would work exactly. Maybe you create your own version of Claude Code. Maybe you create your own version of, a super enhanced version of Lovable that just makes really nice looking websites instead of pretty crappy looking websites. Like, but I'm just saying, to Eric's point about like context is king. I.e., like the data on how people use these tools or create things with these tools, like. Figma has the greatest goldmine of design context like in the world, and I don't know how they capture that or if they're thinking about it, but to me it feels like this massive upside opportunity to be the creation tool that actually makes things that look nice and work well.
The other thing Dylan bristled at me about was that I said, when I use these like tools, I just like fucking copy and paste, Substack or whatever, and say like build me Substack. And he's like, well, you're I don't know. It's sort of like you're lazy. Not everybody else does that. I don't know. But I do think like a lot of what works about these is you start with some visual design that you like and sort of replicate it. I don't know.
No, I'm fully on your team here. I feel like most design is remixing, to sort of the remixing is the kind of like generous version, and I think the ungenerous version would be a lot as copying,
think most
right?
Design. I think Figma is a tool where you're trying to build it up on the pixel level, but a lot of these like text-based it's either you're asking the thing to just arbitrarily come up with something you don't know how, or you're sort of like copying and pasting, putting things in. I realize you can put in your own stuff, but I do think there's a lot of like copying that's going on.
I think a lot of this is take right now is going to age like milk. And in a year, we're going to be looking back on this in a world where the foundation models have just chosen to train more on good design. You know, it won't be like Eric having to copy paste pictures of Substack to like copy it. It'll just come out with better looking designs when you vibe code. And I think that's the future.
You can feel the AGI today, James.
Yeah. I just think the models haven't like, you know, trained, like the coding models haven't focused on this yet, and they will. Like, it's just a matter of, you know,
Isn't that like a super short Figma case then? I mean, I'm just saying, like,
I guess.
This is why I'm saying they should be in that race. Like, I'm saying, like, they've got this gold mine. They've got to get in here with these other models. Like, you know, they could be the leader.
I don't agree with the gold mine because they don't actually have the connectivity to the code. Like, at some point, like the way that Claude Code works is it like generates actual front end, you know, CSS. Yeah, so I just think, you know, they have like a gold mine of great looking imagery.
All right. Well, breaking news: James is short Figma. James is shorting Figma at the IPO.
I predicted at the start of this episode that we would be high on models today, and that's bearing out. All right. Next up, we've got Harry Stebbings, the only VC we trusted to interview somebody. It helps that he has a podcast of his own, so he knows what he's doing. He interviewed the Granola CEO, Christopher Pedregal. Here's the clip.
My favorite quote is like, will the incumbent gain innovation before, you know, the innovator or the startup gains distribution? Yeah. How do you think about that today? If you think about kind of an OpenAI's ability to do what you do in some respects and have distribution versus your ability to move fast, be very nimble, innovate.
Yeah, I think my view here is that we are in, you know, when the iPhone came out and you had like the beer drinking apps and the lighter apps, like I still think we're in that stage of AI, which might sound ridiculous because whatever, ChatGPT has 500 million users and is clearly useful, but I really think that is the case. I don't think AI is that useful. I think it's today, and I think it's mostly masquerading as useful, but you end up spending a lot of time like rewriting or redoing it. Another way to put that is it's going to be so much more useful in 1 to 2 years. And I think we have yet to see truly AI native like interfaces and products come out. And I think that's the whole question. Like, I think it's not about the products that exist today. It's still like, you know, it's like the caveman days now. It's like who can get to the truly AI native experiences, and whoever builds those first and who gets distribution on that. That's my view. And I think everybody in the industry is pre that right now.
I basically agree with that, but I'm not sure that means like bet on granola. I don't know. It's like a little bit like I sort of philosophically agree with him that there's a lot, you know, of kind of latching AI onto existing products and workflows. And even Granola, arguably, you know, is essentially just latching voice AI onto a Zoom call, essentially. And the interface is, you know, not innovative. It's like a notes app, essentially, with some folders. It's a great product, for the record. I freaking love Granola. But I don't know if the idea that, like, oh, we're in the beer drinking iPhone phase, so, like, ergo, just wait 1 or 2 years and then we'll see where the chips fall, necessarily makes me believe in someone other than OpenAI, I guess. I mean,
it's a great fundraising posture, because it's like, you think we're like, cool now? Like, think about what we'll
wait till next year, maybe.
Really, yeah.
I mean, I feel like, the missing piece for me was the explanation of what the evolved version of his product looks like, which maybe he doesn't want to say, would have made that argument a lot more compelling.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of like the early social media days where, you know, first you have all of these media companies just put their products on the internet, and then it turns out that the form factor that succeeds dramatically is Facebook or Twitter or something, right? That's just like a totally different product.
But if we had interviewed the MySpace CEO in 2003 and he had said, you know, we're not really at the final form of social media, like, you know, it's coming, and then we're going to really like unlock the value you get out of social media. And you'd be like, this dude's totally right, but like, does that mean MySpace is going to win? I mean, I don't know. It's sort of I feel like there was a little bit of that kind of comment where it was like, so you're saying like nobody's figured it out, so ergo like we're all just kind of killing time until the models get better for a year or two.
But wasn't MySpace like we're hot shit? Like I don't know.
No, I'm for the record, I'm not saying the MySpace CEO would have said that. I'm just like,
right. I'm just saying you'd prefer the CEO who at least is like a realist about where we are if he's correct.
I guess if the MySpace CEO did say that, they would be directionally correct in that, like, you know, most newspapers didn't win, like incumbents, right? But I guess you can argue, like, this is where it gets to be like a tricky argument. Like OpenAI, are they really the incumbent, or are they also just the, you know, another startup that is, you know, in the game as much as Granola?
Yeah. I just don't get I want transcripts, and I know they give it to you, but like, I don't want to query it for general takeaways. Like I want it to give me specific lines out of the conversation. And so the whole thing sort of annoys me because it does the opposite of what I want, which is
you could
give
get
me
the
its
transcripts.
gloss. It shows you the whole transcript, but I want it to deliver like, here are the 5 best quotes, or like, give me the specific verbatim thing that was said. And it's always trying to approximate sort of what was said.
I think the way that Harry asked the question was like, how do you think of incumbents getting to, you know, the product versus the innovator? But like in this case, we're calling OpenAI an incumbent, not an innovator. I don't know. They're innovating
well, that
more.
was funny. I mean, that's sort of the role Figma played, where it's like, oh, you're the incumbent innovator now. Like,
right.
And Notion is a similar one. There's this whole set of companies that like, oh, in any normal sense, you'd be like, this is my innovator moment to be on the public markets. And now it's like, no, you're already the incumbent. There's a new wave. I think that was like a big meta theme of the event.
Right. And I'm just saying we need to be a little bit more precise with the definitions here of like who are the incumbents? I don't know.
Incumbents, anyone who thought they knew what their company was pre ChatGPT 3. And everybody, you know, the upstarts are people who said, oh man, I have to invent my company with ChatGPT in mind.
I just say I basically what I'm seeing is that companies like Notion and Figma are very much like live players in this game, and they're really trying to avoid these disruptions from below.
Our next clip is from the first panel of the day with Microsoft's Bonnie Croft and Hugging Face's Thomas Wolfe. I introduced it saying this was my smart people panel. It was the question of whether we'll find novelty in AI and where true discoveries lie with the AI systems of the day. Let's hear what they had to say.
So Thomas, you wrote this great essay, basically, you know, asking the question of, will AI produce a Nobel Prize? Will it create an Einstein? Like, what was your conclusion there? How optimistic or not are you about the ability of the current paradigm to produce a true revolutionary idea?
Yeah, I'm not super optimistic on this right now. Yeah,
not optimistic. You almost whispered it.
That's maybe the. I'll really.
You're like, this isn't the crowd to admit it.
Yeah. In most panel, I'm usually the optimist because I think there's a lot of great stuff you can do with AI. And probably you got the idea right here, which is you have two things with AI. So you have the assistant that's really getting amazing, and I think training DFT models, training AlphaFold, these are amazing assistants, and they will definitely lead to some interesting discovery. But like we were discussing yesterday, where we started to talk about this panel, this discovery will come from this spark of creativity of a human saying, oh, I'm going to use AlphaFold to explore these proteins, and that will be the thing, and then AlphaFold helps you find how it works. And then you have the other thing, which is taking this trillion parameters model and ask them, invent something now, invent something new. We want to travel faster than light. How should we do, right? If you ask that to ChatGPT, nowadays the answer you get are pretty bad.
Well, I don't really understand his takeaway exactly. Would it count if a scientist used ChatGPT or GPT-5 to like win a Nobel Prize? I mean, I think he's saying that is clearly going to happen.
I think both panelists were bullish on AI models expanding like the search space for discovery, or being like, we're going to be able to like, I'm an expert in material X and it will consider material Y, but it doesn't think this sort of like contrarian, like think outside the box, reinvent core premises, that AI is capable of doing that.
I mean, I think he's saying like, if you just ask the big model, like right off the shelf, go invent something for me. It's not very good at that. I agree with that. That could change, but that is the current case, I guess. That doesn't really matter. I mean, like we're going to have, if even if it's just, humans have to like tell it to do something that's adjacent to their own research, like that would still be revolutionary.
Yeah, I'm definitely with James here. I mean, you can't just walk to a random human scientist and be like, "Oh, go figure out, the nature of the universe or whatever." I mean, like it's like, okay, well, give me 50 years and I'm gonna go do research and dig into things, right?
He's saying we're training these models on the boring rule followers, which are him. He includes himself in this, and the vast majority of us. But he's saying that the true novel discoveries are created by independent thinkers, and that we are not training AI to be that sort of revolutionary.
I just don't believe this. So, obviously none of us are scientists, but I do think
you don't believe that there's this like persona of defiance?
No, of course I believe that being an independent thinker is incredibly important to making novel discoveries. But I think so much of the way novel discoveries come about is not just this personality, but it's searching the sort of frontiers of what we know and being aware of, to go Rumsfeld here, like what are the known unknowns, what are the unknown unknowns, and even in that protein folding example, you could say, okay, well, here's like 10,000 proteins that I think might be interesting in terms of like being an agonist for this receptor. Like, what are the top 100 you think I should look at or whatever? And like even just narrowing down that list from 10,000 to 100, using a genius AI is like 100x improvement in the efficiency of this search space where you're trying to discover, new science, right? So like, I don't really believe that like, dude sitting alone, like, coming up with crazy ideas is how most scientific discovery happens. I think a lot of it's searching these efficient frontiers that we've discovered so far and trying to continue to push them forward in interesting ways. And being 100x as efficient as filtering ideas or remixing ideas or sort of creating slight tweaks on what we know so far is so much of, I think, discovery, which I think AI would be tremendous at. Yeah.
Connecting ideas across disciplines, right? Like, you know a lot about both biology and chemistry and physics or something, right? Which I think the models are clearly best in the world at in terms of depth of knowledge in every scientific discipline. So I think if we believe that connecting the dots across these fields is important to discovery, like I think we're, tracking in a great way there for the models.
I think the defense is one, like the models are pretty capable now. And like, even in the sort of like, okay, we're not revolutionary thinkers, like find the cool stuff. I feel like it's a little underwhelming. I mean, I still don't think it's like delivering me scoops. So, but putting that aside, I think we're all somewhat optimistic that like the sort of rule follower, consensus, associative thinker will be able to find a bunch of stuff that we just haven't put together, and there'll be this period of a lot of value. To sum up my point here, models are sycophants. Sycophants don't win Nobel Prizes. I think every great man story in history is about sort of like rejecting the consensus, I think. But my point is, they're sycophants. The models are, and like academics, need to be free thinkers. And until we can figure out how to train a model to really resist core premises, we're reinforcing the status quo. And so it might discover things that we would have already concluded, but to really reject human thinking, it feels like that's not how it's trained. That's how I see the argument. I don't know if I totally agree with that. Moving on to what I think will be our last clip of the day, perhaps the most provocative. We have a great line from the CEO of Synthesia, Victor Riparbelli. Definitely designed for peak spice. Give it a listen.
I guess, last question for you, Victor. Like within a company, similarly, like what percentage, how many times a day am I going to be watching an AI generated video that's explaining something to me like 5 years from now? Is it daily, hourly, every 5 minutes, everything I do? Like what percentage of the corporate experience is going to be consuming AI generated video, 5 years down the road?
I think it'll probably mirror your personal life, right? So
okay.
I mean, I don't know that well, but when I look at my own like media mix of like what I consume, I consume mostly podcasts, YouTube videos, TikTok videos, Instagram Reels, Instagram photos. I also do read, but way less than I did 5 years ago. And I think that'll be kind of mirrored in the workplace. It could be hard to imagine exactly what it's going to look like, but I truly think that is clearly what people prefer when no one just tells them what to do. And so I think that's what we want to kind of see in the workplace as well. And I have this, often very provocative to people idea that your kids are not going to be reading and writing; they're going to be watching and listening almost exclusively. And I think that is going to happen.
I'm teaching my daughter to read right now.
But I think at some point, I think text will just feel a bit like vinyls or something, right? Or like we'll do it sometimes because it's like a fun, nostalgic thing. But for actual information dissemination, it's going to be like very low bandwidth compared to that.
Where's Paul Graham? That's my first reaction. Paul Graham has been beating the drum. Writing is thinking. And so I guess my biggest defense of writing and why this terrifies me the most is less that like everybody, I mean, it's good to, reading is how you learn to write and writing is how we think. And so if we don't have reading and writing, human intelligence as we know it today collapses. That's not necessarily a defense to the lure of video, which I agree is very strong, but definitely this vision is, to me, one of much stupider human beings.
Well, do you feel like right now in this podcast, you're not thinking, you're not learning like I do? I feel like I have to like, think about what you guys are saying and concoct my, responses like on the fly. And I just think like if I could constantly talk to other humans, whether they're actually AIs or not, like I don't know, I think I'd still be learning, right? Like, so I guess I kind of understand what he's saying.
Professionally does both. Podcasts are in an intellectually lazy medium compared to writing. Writing, you really have to figure out your argument. Like I could just be, I'm most fun on a podcast being loud, boisterous, disagreeing, slipping around. Like the All In guys have the most popular podcast in the world. Writing requires you actually like organize your thoughts. Somebody could break down an argument. I think podcasting is a much lazier way to engage with ideas than writing.
What about like a one-on-one tutor, just chatting, one-on-one with a tutor?
Socratic, right? If you really push it, but it's just so easy. Conversation lends itself to being social and like slipping to the next thing. And like, this is why this whole, there's the whole Silicon Valley way of, argumentation that's sort of like we're following each other's ideas and like jumping around. That's not how you would write like a proof. And like, I just think if you want, argument and reasoning in sort of like proof form, writing is much better than talking.
Yeah, I just think we're basically talking about like the average person growing up in America, like how will they learn in 12 to 15 years? Like, I definitely think there will be a lot more like personalized tutoring that basically feels more like working one-on-one with a human, assistant, right? And so less writing. I agree with that. I don't know if it means no writing, but
is this fatalist? I sort of agree with we are going to be pulled to less writing. I'm just saying, do you think we'll be dumber if we write less?
I don't know, man. I think the percentage of Americans that like write and at all, like, essentially like rounds to zero for, I would argue, probably 98% of the population. Like, and so I would sort of argue like you're already there in this dystopia if you believe this is a dystopia. And then on the other hand, I'm kind of more Team James here, which is I agree writing is a form of thinking. And I think having to prepare your thoughts in written format allows you to distill and improve them. But I also don't think it is the only way to think. I mean, like thinking is thinking as well. I mean, there is a whole, there's a whole genre of, shower thoughts, right? I mean, like Elon Musk always says he comes up with his best rocket ideas while he's showering and stuff. Like, is he writing them down on the, the squeegee, like, on the wall of the shower? I mean, like it is, I have always thought like my best thoughts came from like exercising or like walking around or something, it's not writing, right? And so I'm just not sure I believe like, first of all, that near as makes no difference. Basically, nobody writes in, the United States, I would argue. And then B, I think there are other ways to think. So I sort of believe Victor's thesis, and I think it's a little bit less dystopian. But, you guys are both, I think, better writers than I am. So you might find more.
But you write company memos, you communicate things.
But I don't necessarily think that's my best thinking. I'm not like looking back on my company memos and being like, oh, those are much better thinking than when I have a good conversation with James.
I mean, this is a deep sort of question that I think about a fair bit. And I'm a pretty auditory person, like love audiobooks and everything. But I think in terms of writing, you can have great ideas in the shower, great ideas on a podcast, but like what's unique about writing is the emphasis on revision. And I think what writing has is that you have to sort of go back and say, oh, does that sort of make sense? And so, I think, smart people, like this sort of like first burst of like this great idea. And like that is like really fun on a podcast and like a first draft of writing. But I think like a tight argument is often in revision, and writing is unique there, where you have to sort of face your ideas and sort of beat them down and reform them and make them work.
Back to Paul Graham, Y Combinator has basically a 2-phase application process, right? The first is super writing heavy. You answer all these questions about your company. I think Max and I found that to be a very helpful process in some ways, where it kind of forces you to like refine your startup idea. But the actual like interview process is 10 minutes of them asking you questions, in a conversation, right? And I also found that to be like a very thought-provoking experience. So I don't know whether you need both or not, but it seems like we're definitely gravitating to a world where conversation is going to be more prominent, and you'll be able to do that like sort of Socratic style of pushing people's ideas.
I think this like Socratic dialogue is definitely another sort of valid and interrogating line of thought that is a little different than podcasting. In podcasting, I think there's often an agreeableness and a sort of like, we're all going to the same place, and like sort of like improv or something. Whereas like we're a true like interview Socratic dialogue. And that's, I think, where teaching can fit in, where you're really like challenging. That can help. The last thing I'll say is like, you can write with ChatGPT. So I don't know that I necessarily think what's happening with AI is going to totally hurt writing. It's making a great writing tool that really interrogates you much more available.
Yeah, it does seem like people are probably writing more than they were in the past now with ChatGPT, because you have to write full sentences. Google was just about keywords. You end up in these longer dialogues. So I wouldn't be surprised if like we're on like a slight uptick in writing.
But I think the elites are probably in a downward trend. I don't know. You read old like famous people letters to their friends. I mean, I just feel like there are like these long sort of reflections in some of these letters.
But I mean, to come back to the overall point, like, was the quality of their thinking like superior to ours? I just don't believe that. Like, I think that if you look at any metric you can measure over time, there's this concept of like the Flynn effect, which is that IQ keeps going up on average over the decades, right? So like, yeah, sure. I mean, John Adams and like Abigail Adams like wrote some amazing letters, but like the at least the average IQ in their society was much lower than today, even though the elites were all writing much more. So I'm just not convinced.
The elites are way less literary today. I mean, you agree with that?
For sure, of course, because that was kind of the only medium for expression.
Right now. We're going to movies. Yeah. Movies contain a lot of information, but I remain,
pessimistic about the world. Basically, you remain. No,
I know. I think AI is going to democratize a lot of tools. I think we're still in this period where this is allowing much more people to get access to education than before. So I think it'll be net good, but I think it's encouraging some of us like super elites to be lazier than we should be, and that writing is a good way to think.
This is a super elite podcast, for the record, obviously.
I mean,
us
super
elites, yes.
I just admit it. Like, nobody wants to say they're elite anymore. Like,
I plan to be at Davos this year with my fellow super elites.
Oh my God. I'm not trying to be indulgent. I'm just trying to be honest that we don't reflect like, the average reading, writing consumption. Max, you're teaching your daughter to read. That's sort of an inspirational story. What's the method to teaching her to read?
This is the beauty of it. Is it's an iPad game. It's an interactive iPad game that's actually made by a startup up in Seattle, I believe. It's called Mentava, and
this is not incredible. A paid ad.
This is not a paid ad.
And it costs a fortune. You're somehow getting it for free, I think.
Getting it for free because my daughter is becoming an influencer, which is also an important skill. They're making videos of her playing the app. But yeah, I mean, it's awesome because I think the screen time has become such a meme among parents that it's sort of objectively bad to have any screens in your kid's life, especially in the super elite circles that I roll in. And this app is teaching my daughter to read at years ahead of when she would be learning these things in school. And so I think it's just evidence, to come back to the more optimistic perspective on software and AI in general, that interactive experiences, even if they're sort of purely educational, can be a really positive thing for kids on screens and using software. And so I actually think this app makes me very long like AI education and sort of software driven human improvement or augmentation or whatever you want to call it, because she's making progress at just a crazy rate compared to school. So whether or not videos or games are the way she learns how to read or learns math eventually, I think there's clearly much better ways for kids to learn things. And in my opinion, a lot of it involves software and AI.
That's a much happier note to end on. Thank you very much. All right. Well, we'll see you guys ahead of the next Cerebral Valley AI Summit. It'll be in San Francisco on November 12th. I'm sure we'll have a lot to catch up on in late October and November. We'll see you then.